None of our tertiary institutions here in Jamaica teaches, especially speech therapy.
Yes.
Speech therapy, you're on a waiting list, so you not even know when. That can be about 2027. But the reality is, what are you gonna do with these children at home? You know, somebody need to tell us because we need to know. Welcome back to our channel and thank you once again for joining us in this another day in the life of living on Autistic Edge. I am Terry and Elaine.
And I am low and feel Elaine.
And we are here to share with you tips and tricks of how we navigate through our journey right here on Autistic Edge.
So we're continuing in our series looking at parents and the challenges that they face dealing with children that are on the autism spectrum. So today we'll be looking at parental challenges with education support.
Oh, that's a huge one, dear.
Well, start and tell
That's
us.
like our story, right? Now, these challenges can be very multifaceted, right? And demanding. Let's talk about this one first. Navigating the special education system. Now, understanding the intricacies of the special education policies can be very overwhelming for parents.
Yes.
Now, the reality is we may have some policies and we're not going to say we don't have policies, and every region different. So if you're listening from the United States or some other countries, your situation in your area might be different. We are from the Caribbean, more specifically to Jamaica, and we're going to be talking about what happens in our system right now. The having the appropriate individualized education plan, which we refer to as IEP, no, that is a challenge. Writing an appropriate plan is really a challenge. Now, it's a challenge for both educators and parents.
Yes.
A lot of parents really don't understand what to expect from the IEP. Some don't understand IEP, some don't even know what the meaning of IEP is.
Right.
And again, they may not know what is supposed to be on the IEP. Now, as for our educators, what we find is some of them may not know how to write an effective IEP, and that makes it difficult because if we don't capture the individualized treatment that the child needs, we're not going to be able to put an effective IEP together, right? Educational grants. It's difficult. Some parents don't even know that there are grants exist that you can apply for access to help with your educational needs. Now, another thing about having the grants though, but is finding the institutions. One of the things that we think is needed is that the grants need to be open to more institutions, so that, because for now, I think what we have is that there are special institutes. There are some, let me not say special, there are some institutions that you will get the grant for. If your child going to some other institution, you may not get it if it's not supported by the government. All right. And again, caregiving services can be very expensive. Some, like ours, Alex Xavier, non-verbal, advanced, and this severe, rather, on the spectrum, he needs a caregiver. We have to have that constant care for school and after school when we are not at home, before we get home from work. Now, I mean, you heard me just talk about a whole heap of things in one right here. So that is just enough for a parent to really navigate through. And when you talk about access to services, dear, tell us a little bit more about the access to some of the services that are required.
Right. So contingent to the regular education activities that would normally be carried out in schools, there are certain intervention services or strategies that will need to be employed depending on the need of the
child, of
child.
course.
So, for example, one such one is speech therapy. You'll find that speech therapy isn't typically offered through the education system. So, this is a service that you'll need to access independently of the school. Then you have occupational therapy, behavioral therapy. The availability of these sessions can be pretty limited, and as a result, we have long waiting waiting lists. So you'll find as a parent, you might have to educate yourself. You might have to
Stress
do
we out.
a lot of research and learn and practice.
There are some regions that the therapists do work together, right? And I think that is more appropriate when you have the ABA therapy, the speech therapist, and the occupational therapist. They come together. So when you have an IEP, you would have like a comprehensive report that it can be incorporated at school and everybody working on the same goal. But now, one of the things that we are having is that for these specialized areas, everybody works independently on their own thing, and sometimes you don't get a report.
Yes.
I mean, we got some report from ABA therapy. We have never gotten a report from speech therapists. We have never gotten a report from occupational therapy, and that makes it difficult. So when we sit down to do that IEP at school, the IEP has no goal for occupational therapy because there are some elements of what you do in school. It's a part of occupational, it's a part of speech therapy, and it's also a part of ABA therapy. And what we find is that the lack of collaboration between the different therapists and the school, at the end of the day, the IEP is really inefficient. It's really not adequate, and I don't think it covers the goals as much as I think it should be. All right, so the next thing we're gonna touch on is the collaboration with the school. Effective communication and collaboration between the educators, the school administrators, and the parent. It is critical, but at the same time challenging. There are times you'll have misunderstanding and difference of opinion on what constitute the appropriate support. And this can lead to conflicts as well.
Yes.
Because the parents on a whole, at times, we are not sure as to what is it that the institution is offering, right? And because there is also an expectation from the parents, and sometimes the expectation is not delivered from the institution, and that creates conflict. Because when you meet to talk about it, the parents might be, well, we think this is what you should be doing, and the educators are saying, well, this is not our responsibility, or peradventure they didn't even know that is what they should be doing. Now, managing these expectations and managing these conflict can be very difficult, right? Now, in the education system in our area, and we are sure that there are other areas that may have it in your region, it may be different, but we are talking about our experience, right? We have lack of trained educators. Now, we are having increase, it can be twofold. It could be increasing number of children now on the spectrum, or increased number of children being assessed or diagnosed,
Yes.
right, on the spectrum. But whichever one, we still have more. We have enough more. It's growing. Now, what we find is there is not sufficient institution that are able or capable of teaching these children, right? So you have lack of trained educators. Some of the educators themselves, they don't know, right? And in some of the institutions that we have as named as special education institution, you may find that in those institutions you may not have trained educators or trained teachers, right? And you may
Trained
do,
in the area of special needs.
yeah,
It's not that they
because
may not be trained, but they're trained with working with children, but they're not necessarily have a wealth of experience in special
yeah,
needs.
because this is what I was also going to say, is that they may have a certification in special needs, but they are lacking the required expertise or experience in terms of handling and the know-how in
Right.
teaching these kids.
The other part of it
Mm-hmm.
is, remember, special needs is a broad area,
Yeah,
and autism as well. When you're trained as a special needs educator, the emphasis obviously would not necessarily be on
beyond autism
autism
or autism only.
or autism only. So
Right.
they have to be trained in a broad sense.
Mm-hmm.
What we're finding though is the education and the strategies around autism specifically probably need to be strengthened because of the individualized and specialized attention that needs to be given to these particular
Yeah.
children. So
Mm-hmm.
there's no doubt that persons are undergoing some training, but the sufficiency of that training, one. Number two, the kind of experience in the area as well may not be according to what the needs are at the moment.
Yeah, and what you find again is that there are multiple different ways of placing these children in classes, right? Now, we know that nowadays it's being promoted that we should have them in a more inclusive environment, right? The reality is there are instances where you may have to separate them based on the needs. But what you find is that there are some schools that they may just put them together based on their age. And then what you find, it becomes more challenging for the teacher in a class. Now, even if you have a smaller classroom, let's say you have 10 students in that classroom, you may have 10 different students. You have 10 students and they may have 10 different needs. So for that one teacher, or I mean, most of our classrooms have one teacher. Not all the schools will have a teacher and an assistant teacher or an additional caregiver to help along, right? But let's say for our typical environment, we have one teacher. When you have one teacher, you have 10 children in the class, they have 10 different needs. When you come to teach the class at 10 different needs, so when you have 6 subjects for the day, I don't know, you manage 6 subjects with 6 different needs, or 6 subjects, 10 different needs for each subject. The balancing. Now, so because of how we may group those children in the class, it becomes a challenge to teach them because the teacher is all over the place. You might be talking to the class, you may have a section of the class that is verbal, you may have a few in the class that is non-verbal, and the teacher will need to balance between the verbal and the non-verbal and balance meltdown and all of those stuff. Especially some of the kids may not have caregivers. I mean, it's just not practical.
Yeah, it
So
is.
I think the whole education system based on what we have now need to be looked at.
The next area that we want to look at is training and the knowledge of parents. Access to training and resources to better understand autism and effective teaching techniques can be limited for parents. There isn't a lot of access to those resources for the parents to kind of learn about the condition itself.
Right.
And you have the situation where the therapist they are working with the child alone, so the parent isn't necessarily involved in the session or be able to view what is taking place in the session. The parent is also not given the opportunity to learn any hands-on techniques.
And one other thing too, we saw where April was Autism Month,
Yes.
Autism Awareness Month. There were a lot of presentations and summits and all of this that were being held around the place in terms of giving information. But what I find though is a lot of the presentation, they talk more about what is autism, the history, how autism came about, and all of that. And one of the common thread that I saw in a lot of the presentation were parents were just yearning for knowledge. I am here to learn. What am I supposed to do? I have a child who cannot talk. What am I supposed to do? I have a child who need potty training. What am I supposed to do? So we find a lot of those questions which would have indicated that these parents, they really and truly don't know what to do. The next thing we're going to talk about, point number 5, consistency and quality of education. Now, ensuring the consistency in the quality of the educational support, especially the transition between grades or school.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this is of significant concern
Yes.
because one, we spoke about the IEP earlier,
Mm-hmm.
and the IEP not being very effective
Yes.
and not capturing the information as it really should be capturing. Now, if we're not capturing the information correctly, then we have problem again when you have to do transition.
Right.
One of our experience that we had was when we do a transition from one grade to the next, the next teacher was clueless in terms of what were we supposed to do. And the feeling was the teacher was just doing an assessment all over again to understand where they need to start working with the child. Well, in effect, we should have had that report from the previous grade class available to the next teacher, that when they come, we say, all right, let's see where the child left off last term, and we do a little assessment to see, okay, did the child regress, and then we pick up from there. Another thing we had was that the high turnover of the educators in the system was just a real challenge, because once you establish a routine with one educator, and we thought that things were going well, probably by the middle of the term you had that turnover. I mean, the staff turnover in the special education system is very high, and that disrupt the routine, it disrupt the growth, and it also disrupt the support of the child. Any particular support
Mm-hmm.
that is being disrupted becomes a challenge to the educator, because what you find here is the child just start
Yes.
regressing, and then you don't know what to do, and tantrum coming, so parental tantrum and children tantrum and all of these things, meltdown. Whew, that's a lot. Then the financial strain, dear. Me no know if me want to talk about the financial part of it. You tell us.
All right. So it can be a pretty expensive endeavor when you think about the different costs associated with caring for the condition. You have to think about the cost of the different therapies. You talk about speech, occupational, applied behavioral therapy. Then you think about if you need to do some private tutoring, which supplements what's being done at regular school,
Right.
or you need to do some kind of a specialized program with the child. And if your child requires the caregiving services that Terian mentioned earlier, in terms of having a student assistant at school, and then having additional support at home, it is
And
it
and
is a pretty
another and
penny.
in addition to that too, dear, if you have extracurricular, because if the
Yes.
children are involved in extracurricular that relates to probably some occupational thing, so
Mhm.
you may be doing additional thing like swimming,
Yes.
netball, music, and all those kind of stuff, depending on what the child is interested in. Those are also additional fees.
Right. Well, yes, there are additional fees, and they may be, let's say, for the neurotypical child, because you can, as a person offering those services, cater to many more of those children in a single sitting. For a special needs child, you may have to have a dedicated session for those, so you end up spending even
Yeah.
more money there as well. And then there are some of these services that are not covered by insurance or
Not at all.
any other means. So you have to supplement. You have to dig deep into your pocket to spend
Pocket,
for.
dear, the special need people in pocket have hole.
Yes,
When you go
yes.
down in the pocket, not in there.
Right,
Tell me
right, right.
about it.
So the financial challenges are indeed very real.
Yeah, it's very, very, very real. All of that we just mentioned, it creates some emotional and mental health problem when it comes to our parents of children with special needs. The constant need for advocating for these different services to make sure that your child get the right service, it's very challenging. It's like it's a struggle, right? It is emotionally exhausting. It's already exhausting caring for these children, and just to know that You can't just get to an institution and know that, hey, my child is going to be accepted and everything that is needed is there and all of that. No. So what you find, parents get stressed out. Parents end up in anxiety, the feeling of isolation, because your child may be in an educational institution and probably the child may have some behavioral issues and they don't have access to the ABA therapy. What you find is that some of the educators actually put these children out of school. So parents are called to say, listen, we can't take your child anymore. So that is additional stress because now you feel isolated,
Yes.
right? And in addition to the demands for the caregiving, the finance, and the everything out there, it is just a whole lot
It
for
is.
us as parents to really
It
navigate through.
it is. It is.
Yeah,
It is.
yeah. There we have just talked about one whole heap of stress in the educational support. Now we know that we as an individual can't really fix the education system.
Yes.
It needs a community of people. It needs a multifaceted approach. It needs a governmental intervention. It needs parental. It needs more of the professional. It needs more professional intervention. We are struggling, real
Yes.
struggling. And we here on the Autistic Edge, what we have done is we have done a revolutionary approach to this thing. The approach that we have taken, a lot of parents out there can't do it. Them not have the resource, them not have the know-how, them not have the skill, them not have the will. If they have the skill, the will, they don't have the time. No. So what are the recommendations?
Right.
So this section is more like an appeal. So we will have to just appeal to the government, the Ministry of Education. They need to do more for us in this section. That's what we are asking for.
Yeah, and it goes broader than just the government, but I mean the stakeholders in the
In the
whole,
industry.
yeah, in the whole autism setup and special needs setup. That's really what we're looking at, because we need better access to resources.
Yeah.
Those who are in the underserved communities, they have it extremely challenging, and even for some, they may be able to find the means in terms of the funds, but then the resource themselves, it's challenging to access. So we need to be able to have better access to resources, better availability of these resources, and better support from the different areas.
No, another thing to highlight though, but we ask for more resources. But here is another big major challenge that we have, and especially here in Jamaica. None of our tertiary institutions here in Jamaica teaches, especially speech therapy, right? Because we're not aware of occupational therapy and speech therapy being offered here. I think we may have probably a one we probably may have probably a one or two institution that offers ABA therapy, but most of these courses are really not offered here.
Yes.
We need a crash course because the children are being born, the children are being diagnosed, and at this stage, children are being at home. Children are at home. They can't even go to school because there's no school in their area that will take these children. And the fear is parents are at home, they are stressed out with these parents, and the fear of abuse for these children when you don't understand their emotional needs. Because when you have to navigate your emotional needs and the child emotional needs, we need resources, we need more support for these parents with children. We need more education to teach the parents hands-on and to help them. What do you do when your child is for example, dear, take for example speech therapy. The waiting list now for being assessed is about next year you're getting invitation, you're getting appointments to
Right.
2025 dates you're getting for appointments.
Yes.
Speech therapy, you're on a waiting list, so you're not even know when. That can be about 2027. But the reality is, what are you gonna do with these children at home? You know, somebody need to tell us because we need to know. What do you do when a child is on a waiting list? 2025, 2026, school starts September. What is the plan for September morning for these children? We need to know. Somebody need to tell us. Understand?
Right. Then we get into the whole matter of awareness. I think much more can be done in this particular area. The Ministry of Health, I know, goes through some educational campaigns for various things at different points in time, and other ministries. So our appeal is awareness has to be built for there to be acceptance of children and adults with the particular condition. There are so many people that are not aware of what the condition is. What do you look for? How do I interact with these persons? And because of that, we find a lot of mistreatment of these individuals.
Yeah.
People turning up their noses, making certain kind of comments and remarks. And sometimes when we hear it, we have to just pity them, because it's just the ignorance that is really
Yeah.
the place that is coming from. So our appeal here is for greater awareness and more resources to be placed in the whole matter of broadening the awareness, so that persons can become more familiar with the condition and how to interact with persons on the spectrum.
Over the period between April, March, April up to now, we have done numerous presentations
Yes.
with different institutions. We have clubs, we have some of the
Association,
association. We did presentation with schools,
churches.
churches, and even a some parent summit that we had recently. That was a very, I like that program,
Yes.
spreading the awareness in different area of parenting.
Yes.
And autism and single parent was, we spoke about that one, which was just very hard. Can't even think about it for couples. And it's good to see our churches are coming on board, and we are open wherever the awareness is needed.
Yep.
That is what we are here for. We share this through our channel here, and we go in person to help our people to understand. And
So I just want to add here, there, that I'm gonna put up a slide just right now that will show folks how to reach us.
Right.
It doesn't have to be just the YouTube channel. There are other areas that you can reach out to us on, the Instagram, WhatsApp, where there's an email address, and you'll see it right here on the screen.
All right. So with that, for this week, we'll pause here. Until next time, thank you so much for joining us in this another day in the life of living on Autistic Edge. I am Terry and Elaine.
I am Lowenfield Alain.
Please remember to like, share, and subscribe to our channel, so the next time we put out another content,
You will be
be
notified.
notified.